course, the better decisions you can make as a coach, the better your athletes are going to perform. And that soccer team that's using the system, they used it for the whole off season. This was the first season they did not lose one player game through injury. Not one player missed. I mean, they had players sit out for parts of the game, but they didn't miss a single game where one player had to sit out the entire game. It was unheard of. They've never had that before. So, yeah, the more you have any money to spend in your program, you don't have a budget, you can do RPE. Anybody can do RPE. It's really just asking the athletes to rate how hard of a workout you just did with them. And really what we're doing when we use RPE is two things. Number one, we want to have some idea of, is the athlete feeling the same sense of load that we think we're giving them? Because we might think a workout's easy. Like, it's one thing to write out a workout on paper, it's another thing to actually do the workout. So if you have nothing else to do, how do the athletes rate their workout intensity? How hard is that workout on a scale of 1 to 10? And I generally tend to use a simple scale of telling them 9 to 10 is maximum training, and you expect to feel fatigue after the type of workout for a day or two. 7 to 8 is a hard training, but I probably could do it a couple days a week, not too much fatigue. But if I was to do it every day, I would expect to feel tired from this. A 4 to 6 is moderate. I could probably do a 4 to 6 every day, and I wouldn't expect to feel real tired. 1 to 3, of course, is very easy. I could expect to do that every day and not feel fatigued. And so, as long as you can accurately give the athletes ways to kind of evaluate that, you can use it as a simple, free tool, throw the numbers in Excel and look at them, to get some feedback about what's going on. You can take those numbers, add them up over the course of a week, and find out how much perceived load the athletes were under. And the other great thing about it is, if you have no idea what the athletes are doing in their sport-specific training, and you just have to do an RPE for the day, this gives you a ton of feedback about that. Because I think that's personally one of the biggest problems I see is a total disconnect between what the athlete does in the weight room and what the athlete does in their training in the field or in the ring or wherever. If you have no idea of what's going on there, how do you really know how much stress they're under as a whole? How do you know if what you're doing in the weight room is enough? How do you know if it's too much? How do you know if it's not enough? You really don't. You're just kind of guessing. But if we actually have some numbers to look at it, we can look at the whole of the team, and then we can also find the individual players that maybe have way higher ratings of perceived exertion than somebody else. I mean, if everybody in the team is saying that workout is 6 or 7, you got 2 or 3 people saying it's a 9 or 10, you better figure out why those people put 9 or 10. Either they're out of shape or maybe they're heading down that path, something's going on. So we want to use RPE just because it's free, it doesn't take a whole lot of time, and it gives us valuable information. So next we can look at performance measures, and again, even in performance measures, I think it's better to have some sort of data to look at. So you can look at heart rate monitoring. If you see the heart rate either dramatically higher or dramatically lower than it should be, that's obviously an indication that something's going on. If you have tendo units, you measure bar speed. If you see big decreases in bar speed, obviously something's going on, or strength changes. And we want to actually pay attention to our athletes in their training, in their sport, if possible, to see what they look like in their sport. And that's going to tell us a lot of information as well. So, a couple of these methods, using Bioforce isn't free, using Nintendo's not free. But if nothing else, if you just as a coach or as someone working with clients, pay attention to what they're doing, you use RPE, use some subjective measure of training load. That's the next thing we can look at is using a polar or using some way to measure. You can just do percentage of, or how many sets you do up 90% or whatever. Having some ways to measure the training load, and we actually pay attention to these variables, you should be able to get pretty good feedback, pretty good picture of someone heading the wrong direction before they've already gone too far down the path to do much about it. You should be able to get a proactive approach to being able to improve these things before they're overtrained and we're stuck really dealing with the problem down before injuries. Because as much talk as there is about injuries, specific movement pattern we need to improve, specific exercise we need to improve, at the end of the day, the body has to be able to respond to stress in many different fashions. It's not just the movement itself, it's can the body produce the energy it needs to? Can the body produce muscular force the way that it needs to? And the more that I've looked at all these different variables and kind of try to correlate them to injury, the biggest thing that I've seen correlate to injury is that monthly load and that weekly load in the HRV. The more stress an athlete has been under in the last week and the last month, the higher their correlative, the higher the probability of injury. And sometimes the amount of injury difference is dramatic. There was a guy that presented last year that looked at soccer, playing 1 game a week versus playing 2 games. There was actually no difference in how much they ran because they, of course, practiced less when they played twice. But the injury rate was like 20 or 30% higher in the group that played twice a week. It's because it was a higher level of stress playing a game versus practicing. So the more stress our athletes are under, the more likely they are to break down. It's that simple. So injury prevention isn't just doing a screen, picking the right exercises. It's looking at the big picture of performance. It's looking at the big picture of adaptation, and then making the smartest decisions you can to make sure your athletes have the ability to respond to stress when they need to. Because if I can't produce the right stress response, if I can't produce enough hormones, or if my muscles can't produce the force, and I go out to sprint full speed, worst case scenario, I suck and I'm slow, or sorry, best case scenario, I suck and I'm slow. Worst case scenario, I blow my hamstring out, or I get taken out because I'm in the wrong position at the wrong time, and someone catches my knee, who knows. But the more you look at that as the big picture, the more I think you're going to be able to do a better job of preventing injuries and keeping your athletes durable and available for other ones. So let's look at the overall strategy. This is where we look at how do we keep our athletes durable, how do we keep them performing, how do we keep them improving. So my first goal, and this is again, we're going to talk about when do we apply all these strategies we'll talk about. My first goal is to normalize neurotransmitter levels in the brain. Because the reality is if the brain's neurotransmitters are off, if these things are not what they should be, they're never going to respond positively to anything else, because it starts in the brain. The brain is the master controller of everything. So again, the best is the manometric test for neurotransmitter levels, but there's also some subjective personality questionnaires you can give people, and if nothing else, pay attention to their mood state. If their mood is terrible, if they feel lethargic, those are signs there's problems with probably dopamine, maybe serotonin, a couple other things. The next, I'm going to make sure that they have proper nutritional support. I'm going to keep them having chronically low glycogen levels, because I know that's one of the biggest triggers that the brain uses for overtraining, or most likely. I'm going to try and correct any vitamin or mineral deficiencies they may have. I'm going to protect against excess free radical oxidation formation. I'm going to try and minimize inflammation. I'm going to try and minimize external stress as much as possible. Although life is what it is, sometimes we can only do so much. You at least can try. We're going to find out what their mental state is, and if they have any signs of just being burnt out. I mean, there's something to be said for just athletes get sick of doing the same thing day in, day out. I'm sure we've all been there. There's a mental state, even if physically they may not have too many problems, just if they're mentally burnt out from doing the same things over and over again, that's going to have a negative impact on everything else. And then, of course, the last part is using the right strategies, the right time, appropriately. So if I look at a whole, eliminating imbalances, correct their deficiencies, stimulate the nervous system as necessary, and reduce stress. That's it. This is kind of the durability overview of how I keep them healthy and trained and stuff that works better. So if I look at kind of this yearly overall strategy, during the off season when I'm not in season competing, and my goal is purely to improve my fitness, to improve my performance, to improve my durability. I want to have a balanced nutritional intake, but I'm not going to go overboard with supplementation that may have an impact on the response. I'm not going to overload vitamin C. I'm not going to do a whole bunch of stuff that's going to potentially impact my improvements. I'm only going to use specific recovery strategies when necessary to prevent me going completely downhill, but I'm going to let myself kind of push into the overreaching point at times. I'm just not going to go down the cliff completely, but if I'm trying to really improve performance and fitness, I'm going to have to reach a point of fatigue, because sometimes that's necessary to keep getting better. So I'm going to be more mindful of it, but I'm going to let myself go further down that path than I will during the season. And I'm also going to pay close attention, monitor it. I might allow some week-to-week fatigue to carry over and do that for 2 or 3 weeks, and then allow it to heal up after a week and get back to normal. But during this off-season point, my goal is not just throw as many recovery strategies as I can throughout the entire off-season. I'm going to only use them when I need to, and I'm probably also going to use this time, so when I do choose to use them, I'm going to find the ones that work, so that when I'm in season, when I know I have to use them, I'm going to have a pretty good plan of what's going to happen. Of course, in season, now we're a different animal. We're generally going to look to just improve our skill, improve our strategy, improve our team play, work on our ability to perform when we need to, and I'm going to use a different strategy. I'm probably going to pay real close attention to make sure I'm not accumulating fatigue from week to week to week, because that's where our performance is going to degrade as the season goes on. I generally will do a much thorough kind of baseline metabolic and hormonal and stuff testing before the season, and then I'll do another one maybe mid-season or mid-fight camp, whatever, and see what's changing so we can make adjustments as necessary. I'm going to use as many nutritional strategies as I need to. If someone's not sleeping, I'm going to throw sleep at them. If someone's, his mood seems to be changing, I'm going to retest and throw whatever little transfer stuff out. I'm going to be as aggressive as possible as I can in the season, so that I can make sure that every Saturday or Sunday or Friday or whatever, they're ready to play and they're going to be at their best. So I'm going to be much less mindful here about making sure I'm not causing decrease in performance through using too much. So I'm going to be much more in tune to making sure that come game day they're ready to play. And it's really just more aggressive approach. You don't care if you might